A fan-favorite Star Trek series is climbing the streaming charts for a very specific reason. It's rare for a Star Trek show to suddenly surge back into the spotlight years after its final episode aired. But that's exactly what's happening right now. One of the franchise's most beloved and once underrated series is climbing the streaming charts, fueled by a very specific reason that even Starfleet Command might not have predicted. The renewed love for Star Trek, Deep Space Nine, isn't a coincidence or mere nostalgia. It's the result of a perfect storm of cultural relevance, streaming accessibility, and the show's enduring ability to feel shockingly modern in an era defined by complexity, moral grayness, and serialized storytelling. While Star Trek Deep Space Nine DS9 ended in 1999, its impact continues to ripple through the fandom, and lately, it's finding a whole new audience discovering it for the first time. Let's explore why this show, once criticized for being too dark and too political, is now one of the most watched Trek series on streaming platforms today. The streaming renaissance of Deep Space Nine. Over the past few months, Deep Space Nine has seen an unexpected rise in viewership on Paramount Plus and international streaming services like Netflix and Amazon Prime, depending on the region. Fans have noticed it trending in most popular sci-fi lists, with a significant uptick in online discussions, fan art, and even first-time viewer reactions on social media. So why now? The answer lies partly in accessibility. For decades, DS9 was notoriously difficult to experience in the way it deserved. The show's standard definition image quality didn't age well, especially compared to the remastered glory of Star Trek: The Next Generation. But with new AI-assisted upscaling technology and 4K enhanced versions circulating on streaming platforms, DS9 looks better than ever. That visual upgrade has made it easier for modern audiences, accustomed to sleek sci-fi visuals, to immerse themselves in the show's deep storytelling. But looks alone aren't driving this renaissance. The bigger reason DS9 is thriving again is that it feels like it was made for today's television landscape. The modern world finally caught up to Deep Space Nine. When Deep Space Nine premiered in 1993, Star Trek was at its moral and aesthetic peak thanks to The Next Generation. Captain Picard's Enterprise represented an idealized, utopian federation where humanity had evolved beyond conflict. DS9, however, dared to ask a radical question for its time. What happens when those ideals are tested? Set on a stationary space station orbiting the planet Bajor, a world recovering from decades of brutal occupation, DS9 examined the messy, uncomfortable side of peacekeeping, politics, and cultural reconstruction. Its stories about occupation, terrorism, faith, and identity were considered too heavy for Trek's traditional Planet of the Week format. But fast forward 30 years, and those same themes feel startlingly prescient. In a post-9/11, post-pandemic world shaped by moral ambiguity and political complexity, DS9's willingness to explore moral compromise and systemic power dynamics resonates more than ever. Characters like Captain Benjamin Sisko Avery Brooks, Major Kieran Nary's Nana Visitor, and Garrick Andrew Robinson navigate questions of loyalty, justice, and truth that mirror today's social and political debates. It's no coincidence that modern Trek series like Discovery and Picard owe their serialized storytelling structure and tone directly to DS9's pioneering work. Viewers revisiting it today often remark that it feels like it could have premiered in 2025 rather than 1993. The world finally caught up to Deep Space Nine's vision of what science fiction storytelling could be. The rise of morally complex Starfleet stories. Another major factor in DS9's streaming resurgence is how the modern fandom has shifted toward appreciating moral nuance in science fiction. Gone are the days when fans wanted flawless heroes in perfect uniforms. Today's audiences crave layered, human characters. DS9 was the first Star Trek series to fully embrace that complexity. Sisko wasn't a purely noble idealist like Picard. He was a wartime leader forced to make impossible decisions. In episodes like In the Pale Moonlight, Sisko manipulates events and commits morally questionable acts to secure the Federation's survival. It's one of the most discussed and dissected episodes in Trek history, and it feels more relevant than ever as pop culture re-examines the cost of victory and the compromise leaders make in times of crisis. This imperfect captain archetype has since become a hallmark of modern Trek. Star Trek. Picard explored the trauma of leadership and loss, Discovery delved into moral and cultural diversity, and Strange New Worlds balances optimism with personal vulnerability. But DS9 did it first, and arguably, it did it best. As today's viewers binge it for the first time, they're struck by how emotionally intelligent and daring the writing feels, especially for the 1990s. For a generation raised on serialized shows like Game of Thrones and The Expanse, DS9's complex narrative arcs feel instantly familiar and deeply satisfying. Avery Brooks's Cisco, the captain for our times. Much of DS9's resurgence can also be credited to renewed appreciation for Avery Brooks' portrayal of Captain Benjamin Sisko, a groundbreaking character who has aged into one of the franchise's most admired leaders. Sisko wasn't just Starfleet's first black captain in a leading role. He was a father, a builder, a spiritual figure, and a warrior. His journey, from a grieving widower reluctantly assigned to a space station, to the emissary of the prophets, to a man torn between destiny and duty, remains one of Star Trek's richest character arcs. In recent years, discussions about representation and leadership in science fiction have drawn attention back to Sisko's importance. Unlike Picard's intellectual diplomacy or Kirk's swaggering charisma, Sisko led with empathy and conviction. His relationship with his son Jake Sirik often remains one of the most authentic depictions of fatherhood in the franchise's history. As audiences seek more diverse and emotionally grounded heroes, Sisko stands out as a template for how to write multidimensional, human leaders in genre storytelling. The renewed interest in his character has sparked essays, podcasts, and even calls for a potential DS9 continuation or movie. What We Left Behind rekindled the flame. Another key moment in DS9's resurgence was the 2019 documentary What We Left Behind, looking back at Star Trek: Deep Space Nine, co-directed by showrunner Ira Steven Behr. The film reunited the cast and creative team to reflect on the show's legacy and even imagine what a modern revival might look like. The documentary served as both a love letter to fans and a gateway for newcomers. It reignited conversation around the series' influence, reminding everyone just how far ahead of its time DS9 really was. When it hit streaming platforms, curiosity spiked, and viewers who had skipped it during its original run suddenly found themselves binge-watching all 7 seasons. It also helped that Behr and the team used modern restoration techniques to present select scenes in glorious high definition, giving fans a tantalizing glimpse of what a full remaster could look like. That taste alone has kept the online demand for an official remaster alive ever since. The Dominion War feels strikingly relevant today. In its later seasons, Deep Space Nine evolved into something bold, a serialized war drama set in the Star Trek universe. The Dominion War storyline, spanning multiple seasons, pushed the franchise into uncharted territory, exploring how ideals of peace and diplomacy hold up when the galaxy itself is burning. It's no wonder this arc is resonating again in 2025. The Dominion War's themes, propaganda, the ethics of preemptive defense, the human toll of endless conflict, echo today's global headlines. Viewers are rediscovering how eerily reflective the show was about the psychology of war and its consequences. Episodes like The Siege of AR-558, which deals with PTSD and the dehumanizing effect of prolonged warfare, now hit even harder in an era where discussions about mental health and moral injury are finally part of mainstream conversation. DS9 never flinched from showing the cost of heroism, and that honesty makes it timeless. The fan